Okay, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. So this is the third installment of our simulcast series, Exploring Careers in Teaching at a Community College. This session is Understanding Diversity and Inclusive Teaching in the Community College Environment, and we have two of our panel members here. We will wait a little longer for our third one, but if he doesn't show up, we ask that the other two panel members feel free to answer those third questions. So with that, let's do a little housekeeping before we start. Participants can use the chat box on the left of the screen to ask any questions. There will be some prompts to complete some poll questions here soon, and there will be instructions on the screen for you to do that. Let's go ahead and get started. Did you want to add anything to this?
No, we're good.
Okay. So our first poll question is, did you attend either of the previous events in the series? So there's an option here on the screen, right in the participants box, where you can choose a letter response to the question on the screen. So I don't think you want to write it in the chat box. You want to choose the option in the participant box. Is that right, Shannon?
Yeah, that's correct. It's the fourth icon over just underneath your name. So you can select the option there, A through D.
Oh, okay.
Looks like responses are slowing down a little, so I'm going to go ahead and publish this to the whiteboard. I think maybe Shakita, you're trying to talk, but I can't hear you right now. I think your talk button.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think we skipped a question, so we're on poll question 2. We should have been on poll question 1, but we'll go ahead and talk about poll question 2. So it looks like a good amount of you are planning on applying to a job at a community college. Some folks don't know yet, so hopefully this webinar. So let's go back one question to the first one. I must have clicked the advanced screen twice. So let's go ahead and answer this question. Did you attend either of the previous events in the series? So A was the first one, Introduction to Teaching at a Community College. B was the second, Getting Hired at a Community College. C if you attended both, and D if you attended neither.
Sorry, Shakita, I can't hear you again, I think.
So it looks like we have a lot of folks who haven't attended either. Some have attended both. Okay, so this is some good indicators. So we're adding to that. Okay, so let's move on to the third poll question. Have you received any kind of training on inclusive teaching practices in the college classroom? A if you have, and B if you haven't. Okay. Okay, so I think this is helpful. A lot of you have had some training, but I'm hoping that that will add to the conversation that the panelists will bring, and will provide an opportunity for folks to have some really good questions. So let's move on to the final poll question. What are you hoping to learn today? So for this one, you'll just type in the chat box something that you hope to get from this webinar, or something that you hope to learn today.
And Karina, I don't know if you can hear me. If you can mute, I think we're getting a little feedback from you. If you just push that talk button so that you're muted until we're ready to talk, that would be great.
Okay, looks like some folks want to learn about inclusive teaching in general. Some want to know how to apply practices in a community college setting and how that may be different from a four-year university. Let's see. Some folks want to hear more about teaching at comprehensive community colleges and what they should highlight when applying to them. How to make teaching more diverse. They want to hear some stories or concrete examples of how to implement inclusive teaching and how to create more inclusive environments. Okay, so I think we can move on to the introduction slide. Okay, let's just take it.
Okay, hi everybody. My name and I work in our Center for Education, Innovation, and Learning in the Sciences, which is basically our teaching and learning center for the life and physical sciences here at UCLA. And Shaquita and I work on part of an SF Includes Aspire grant, which she's going to be explaining in a moment.
Okay, so yes, I'm Shaquita. I'm the regional coordinator for the California Regional Collaborative. And we also have Shannon Patton here from CERTL as tech support. So Shannon, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks. Yes, I'm a project manager here at the Center for the Integration of Research, Teaching, and Learning. And I'm also part of my time is divided with the Aspire Alliance and the national change group of that. So I'm kind of here in dual roles. And I'm here throughout the session for any problems that come up. So if you're having any difficulties with hearing or the volume level or your technology, please feel free to put that into the chat, or you can right-click my name to send me a private chat message. Thanks.
Okay, so just to give a very brief overview of this series, and I'll let you know Timothy's been able to join us, so if you could just promote him to the moderator status so we can, and Timothy, go ahead and try to turn on your video and audio. So this is a three-part series. This is the final event. The other ones that we did were on Introduction to Teaching at a Community College. Sasha, who's one of our panelists today, also joined for that. Thank you. And Getting Hired at a Community College, Tips and Strategies from Faculty on Hiring Panels. So both of those were recorded, and they will be made available on Turtle.net. So if you join those, that's great. If you weren't able to make them, you'll be able to watch them and have access to those great resources. Okay.
Okay, so this webinar is an effort brought to you by Aspire in collaboration with APLU and CERTL. APLU is the Association of Public Land Grant Universities, and CERTL is, I can't remember the Center for the Integration, Research, Teaching, and Learning. So Aspire Alliance is an NSF Includes project that aims to increase the learning, persistence, and completion of students from underrepresented groups in colleges and universities in STEM. The Aspire Alliance as a whole has 3 overarching strategic goals. The first is to deepen the preparation of all STEM faculty so they can be more inclusive and effective in their undergraduate teaching, mentoring, and advising. The second is to diversify STEM faculty through effective recruiting, hiring, and retention by transforming institutional practice, policies, and resources. The third is to foster institutional cultures to recognize and value inclusivity and diversity. So Aspire meets these outlined goals through national change, regional change, and institutional change initiatives. So this is a part of one of our regional change initiatives. We have regional collaboratives. So Aspire Alliance is the big picture. The regional collaboratives like Texas, California, and Iowa work to increase underrepresented group faculty at 2-year colleges and to strengthen the skills of career and faculty and future faculty. One of the primary goals of our regional change initiative is to increase the number and diversity of the pool of graduate students and qualified professionals pursuing a teaching career in STEM at 2-year colleges. And this webinar is the result of that. I'm the program coordinator for the California Regional Collaborative, and my primary focus is on building communication channels that strengthen the relationship among Southern California's 2- and 4-year institutions. I will also be coordinating the launch of an internship program for future faculty interested in teaching at community colleges a little further down the line. So you can learn more about the California Regional Collaborative and the other Texas and Iowa collaboratives at aspirealliance.org, and we can put that in the chat box. And you can learn more about the California Regional Collaborative specifically at californiaregionalcollaborative.org or by subscribing to our newsletter, and we can include those links in the chat box as well.
Okay, so we're almost about to start with our panelists here, but just because of today's we're already familiar with, but we really wanted to clarify the differences between the terms diversity, equality, equity, and inclusion. So starting with diversity, this one more straightforward, but the distinguishing point that we want to make is that even though there are lots of ways in which you could have diverse students in terms of race, ethnicity, LGBTQIA status, if they are first-generation students, students with disabilities, you can still have a very diverse classroom that's not very inclusive. And so today we're really going to be focusing on how do we make the classroom climate very inclusive, particularly understanding more about the types of diversity we might see at our community colleges. The term diversity. So I wanted to also, you might have seen this image before or a variation of it. There's actually a lot of different versions of this image. We selected this one because you'll see here on the green graph is kind of indicating that even though students might have some similarities, they're also coming from different backgrounds and different contexts. So everyone's not necessarily coming with the same prior knowledge into the classroom, the same background in terms of their high school preparation, in terms of their socioeconomic status, other advantages or privileges that they might have had. And think about the terms equality and equity. Often equality gets talked about as treating everybody the same, or giving everyone the same treatment. So you can see here in this image that if everyone has the same little box to stand on, that's not resulting in everyone being able to see the baseball game in this metaphor. So in our classrooms, everyone's not able to achieve the same success in terms of their learning. And when we talk about equity, we're really thinking more about the fairness in the outcome. So the outcome is that everyone is able to watch the baseball game, or everyone is able to succeed in a class. And so I just wanted to make that distinction between diversity, equality, and equity. And then when we talk about inclusion, what we're really talking about is the behaviors and the strategies that really create that climate of that allow for the result of equity, or allow for everyone to be able to participate and to feel that they're welcome and that they belong in the college classroom. So that might be a review for many of you, but important since we're going to be using those terms today, just to make sure we're all kind of on the same page with how we're starting out here. So now finally, Shaquita's going to introduce our panelists, and we'll get started with the questions.
Okay, so today's panelists are Timothy J. Contreras, Sasha Moore, and Karina Castillo. I'll allow them all an opportunity to introduce themselves and to answer the question, what are some of the benefits of teaching at a community college, after their introductions. But I do want to start by saying we appreciate your participation in this webinar, and we look forward to hearing so much more from you all. So let's start with an introduction from Timothy.
Hello, my name is Timothy Contreras. Yeah, I'm the professor and chairman of the mathematics department here at Odessa College. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited of what we're going to be talking about in this panel. So,
okay, Timothy, thank you. What are some of the benefits of teaching at a community college? If you could answer that briefly as well.
Oh, the benefits. The focus is that you're focused on teaching. If you're a teacher at heart, it's the place you want to be. You know, you're not really focusing on what do you call it, research, but you're focusing on teaching and helping the students to become successful in the classroom. And you also are part of the community, so you can do community outreach, and you have those opportunities to make a difference in the community. So now you're just not an instructor in the classroom, but you're also making a difference in the community as well. And so it's a very good fit for people who are teachers at heart. And so that's why I'm here, and I'm enjoying every minute of it. So.
Thank you. Sasha?
Hi everyone, I'm Sasha Moore. I she, her as my pronouns, and I have two roles in my district. I have been a professor of English for 12 years, almost 12 and a half, and I also am the district coordinator of equity, inclusion, and compliance for all three of the colleges in my district. And just to answer the question really quickly about the benefits of teaching at the community college, it's way too long of an answer for a 1.5-hour webinar. Just that alone could take the entire time, but I'll echo what Timothy said. There is a lot of opportunity to really be in the classroom, really work with the students. One thing I love about it is it's a very communal environment. Everybody who is teaching at this level wants to be working with and helping the students, and so we have a lot of really fantastic relationships between the student services offices and instruction. We really don't see a separation between the two of them, and that's how we promote a lot of our equitable and inclusive policies and opportunities for students to be successful. And we get to work with students who are from a variety of backgrounds, which I'm sure all three of us will be talking about much more throughout the course of the webinar, but that's really one of the most rewarding aspects of what we do as well.
Thank you, Sasha, and I'm sorry I was saying your name wrong, so Sasha.
It's okay, you're an excellent company, everyone does.
Okay, Karina, an introduction please.
Hello, my name is Karina Castillo, and I teach at El Paso Community College. I teach chemistry, and some of the benefits to teaching at a community college, like my colleagues already mentioned, is the connection that you establish with the students. Since the classes are a lot smaller than, in a four-year institution, you get to know the students, by name, and you can help them better. You can teach them better. Myself, I was an EPCC student. Like I came here, and I like that connection that I have with my instructors, and everything that they did for me, like just set the foundations to to be better, when I transfer to a four-year institution, is the same thing that I'm doing with my students now. And be able to help them and be there for them is, I think, one of the most rewarding experiences of working at a community college. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're getting ready to start the questions for our panel members in the meat of the webinar. But before we do, I want to put the slide here so you can kind of get an idea for the flow and how we want you all to utilize the chat box. So please post your comments and any additional questions in the chat box while we're going through the questions in each section. At the end of each section, we'll provide time for the panel members to answer the questions that you all pose in the chat box. Maybe we might not get to all of the questions, maybe only a few, or if we see themes, we'll ask the panel members to respond to those themes. And right now we have the sections kind of clustered into these three areas: faculty hiring and retention, which will be the first set of questions. So if you have questions related to that, just wait until the end of that session or that section to ask your questions in the chat box. Then we'll talk about student diversity and inclusive teaching last. At the end of the webinar, hopefully there will be a little bit of time to ask any additional questions that may have not been answered during the webinar. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. So our first section is faculty hiring and retention. And the first question is for Sasha. Does the diversity of the faculty match the diversity of the student population at your college? If not, what impact do you think this has on students?
Well, the short answer is no. It definitely doesn't. Hence the reason most of our organizations exist. And my entire job, I think, is focused on this in large part right now. This is a huge problem. I'm in Southern California, so as you are, Shaquita and Jess, I think all of us are focused on the same thing, which is we live in a very inclusive and diverse environment, but our colleges don't reflect that at all. Our students definitely reflect that. They are made up of everyone. You can think of all different kinds of groups of people, and everyone in our colleges also, most of us are intersectionally diverse, and I think that's really important too. Our faculty, though, are not. I can give you an example. The college I work at has about 66% of the full-time faculty who are white, whereas about 25% of our students are. And then about 35% of our students are Latinx, and we have about 12% of our faculty who are, and we've got about, let's see, about 26% of our students who identify as Asian Pacific Islander, and about 13% of our full-time faculty do. So you can see that there are pretty extreme disparities between the racial and ethnic breakdown of our faculty versus our students, and that's really something that we're working to correct. Because I think it is really, really negative for students. I think pretty much everyone who's ever walked onto a college campus has experienced imposter syndrome. Even, I was a first-generation college student, and I was very, very young. I was 16 when I started going to college. I definitely had imposter syndrome, which was really unbelievable from the outside, because all of my teachers looked exactly like me, and I still felt completely out of place and like I didn't belong there, and like I was, as the term suggests, an imposter. I think our students face that frequently, not only for the obvious reasons, but also because when they walk into the classroom, there is no one else who looks like them at the helm of the class. And so we're really working on this model of see it, be it, that if you can see yourself in these different roles, then you know that you can also be in those different roles. That's something that we're really highlighting so that students are not experiencing that feeling as much. I think also a lot of faculty have good intentions but don't necessarily understand how to most effectively work with groups of students who are different from they are or who have different life experiences than they do. We certainly run through a lot of training opportunities to help faculty get on board with working with students who are from a variety of backgrounds, but it doesn't necessarily come naturally to them because that's not what their experience was. And so I think that's a way that students really do not benefit from having more diversity in the classroom as well. I wanted to add to something that I see a lot in HR and in my position as a professor is the constant abusive microaggressions that come from faculty to students and from staff in general to students. Microaggressions, as we all know, are typically unintentional, and yet they are constant. And if you have a different identity than your students do, you may have really positive intentions, but you may be saying things that are extremely damaging to those students. So it's really important, I think, for us to continue to have an uptick in the amount of diverse faculty who are in our classrooms, and that's not just in ways that are visible to the eye. That's also in different identities that folks may possess that they are not necessarily overt about when you look at them, but that they can bring into the classroom too. So this is something I'm super passionate about, and I'm excited that it's a topic in our conversation today.
Thank you, Sasha. Okay, the next question is for Karina. What steps has your institution taken to recruit and retain faculty that reflect the diversity of the student population?
Yes, every time a position opens to hire a new faculty member, we form the hiring committee, and the names of the people who are in the hiring committee are sent to HR, and they are make sure that the committee is, you know, like diverse form, that is fine. And then from there, from the pool the applicants, we also, well, not us, but HR, make sure that we have diversity. We are in a border town, and like about 80% of the student population is Hispanic, and I mean 80% of the professors or faculty members that we teach here, we are Hispanics as well. So the steps that the institution takes is that they're always looking at the applications, and HR is always involved. But since we're in the border town, also like 80% of the applications that we get to come work here are coming from Hispanic people. So it's a good match between faculty and student population.
Okay, so it sounds like the demographics of your area match the demographics on campus with the students and the faculty. So that's a lot different from the rest of the country, but that's really good. Okay, and the next question is for Timothy. What are hiring committees looking for in terms of diversity and inclusive teaching practices? Diversity and inclusive teaching practices.
Well, committees are what they're hiring, what they're looking for is number one, if the instructor is a teacher at heart. We ask certain questions in our interview where we're filling out for the potential instructor, and those questions are talking about, for example, how do you feel about our culture? Did you research what Odessa College is about? Okay, that's one of the main things that we look for. If they're not researching for what we're about, they're not knowing what our culture is about. They're not researching, looking up what Odessa College is about. They won't know what our population is about. So we look for that. That's one of the things we look for is that. Okay, if they know what Odessa College is about, if they know what our goals are, what our things of that nature. Okay. We also are looking for those instructors who are flexible, okay, who will be flexible with students. You'll have instructors that are coming straight out of graduate school who only have experience teaching at a four-year university, and so a lot of the times, a lot of those come from the environment. They're not in touch with their students. Okay, so like for example, I was interviewing recently somebody who wanted to teach here at Odessa College, and I was asking them certain questions, like, when students are struggling in your classroom, how did you go about helping them? And that person was not able to answer that question. He was saying, well, I tell him he was not able to answer that question. He was not able to give me certain teaching strategies that he would use to help that student. All he would say is, I would just basically he just didn't know how to answer it. He just didn't know how to answer that. So that was one of the things that we look for. We also look for flexibility. Will you be flexible? Because one of the things that we have is called the Drop Rate Improvement Program, and out of those four different categories in the Drop Rate Improvement Program is that we have to become a master of paradox, so maintaining a structured course while allowing for some flexibility. And so we're looking for instructors who are flexible with their students, you know, that say, okay, due to certain extenuating circumstances, they're not be able to complete certain assignments. Will you be flexible with them? So also, are there going to be instructors who are going to take on, be a part of the community? So we have what you call an OCLN program, and in that OCLN program, it's required for us to go to the sporting events. Okay, so sport events, community college events, things where we go and support our students. And so we ask certain questions. How do you feel? Do you feel comfortable going to sport events? You know, things like that. How comfortable are you going doing a community service? You know, so we ask those kinds of questions to see how that potential employee is responding. So another thing that we talk about is how do you go about teaching a classroom? So one of the things that we do is we bring the employee on campus after it's like a three-phase hiring process. Forgive me for being all over the place. We first interview the employee. We ask certain questions. If they seem like a good fit, then we bring them on campus to do what you call a teaching demonstration. And so through that teaching demonstration, we get you know some access to how their teaching practices are. Okay, and through all that, you know, based on what we see, one thing that we want to look for are they teachable? Are these teachers that we're going to bring, are these instructors that we're going to bring onto campus, are they teachable? Okay, are they still lifelong learners as an instructor? Because, you know, we don't want them just to stay in one. We don't want them. We want to see if they adapt to other teaching strategies. Okay, and so when we look for those instructors, we want to find teachers at heart, those who love students, those who will say, hey, I don't mind meeting you on the weekends if you need help with work, you know, those kinds of things. So I apologize for being all over the place, but that's basically what we look for. Instructors who want to be a part of the community, who are teachers at heart, and who are flexible with their students. Okay, and we don't want just instructors just to have office hours and not be there. We also have office hours. They have to be there to support the students. So.
Okay, thank you, Timothy. So I took some quick notes to kind of summarize that. What the hiring committees are looking for are folks who have researched the institution, researched the demographics of the students there and the neighborhood, folks who support students, people who are community or active in their community, or community activists, or people who are looking to or already do some community service. Folks who are flexible, trainable, teachable, and people who are lifelong learners, and folks who are present and there to support students. So let's go ahead and move on to the question section. So it looks like we have folks who want to know more about microaggressions. So Sasha, can you say a little more about that? Or Sasha, I'm sorry.
Okay. So yeah, actually, I don't want you all to think that I'm like spacing out over here on the side. I was actually pulling up some of the resources that I typically use for that in preparation for this question. I'm going to plug my own office's website because we have 2 videos on there that are specific to microaggressions that I think are super helpful. And there are ones that I use when I have a student who complains about, not complains as in whines, but makes an actual formal complaint, that kind of complaining, about a faculty member who has said something that's been really hurtful or harmful. If I know the faculty member and I feel like I can interact with that person in a way that's productive and gentle enough, but also will help to change their behavior, I also try to give them some information about how to move forward. And so there are 2 videos that I think are really fantastic. One of them is on YouTube and very easily accessible, and the other one is actually a former SEAL webinar that's recorded. And I'm happy to send out the link to both of those. I actually have them both on one of the offshoots of my office's website, so I'm happy to share those with any of you. They're both relatively short. One's about 40 minutes and the other's about 20 minutes, but they are extremely useful because one goes through every brand of microaggression that exists along with examples, and the other one is actually microaggressions in the classroom. So it's primarily students who are talking about what microaggressions are. So I find those really useful because, as someone was mentioning in the chat box, there's a lot of confusion about what even microaggressions are, and I think that students are very receptive to us acting like humans. I don't think that they expect that we know all of the language. I think that they understand that we're going to sometimes, use language that's maybe not as modern as it could be, or that we may identify them in a way that's not exactly right, or that we might say something that's well-intentioned but actually hurtful to them. And so the most important thing to do, I think, is to really be open with your students from the first day and just say to them, look, I'm definitely going to make mistakes with you, and I want you to know that I would like to know about those. I really want you to be open with me. I'm never trying to be harmful to you. I'm here to help you. And if I ever say something that's damaging to you in some way, first of all, I apologize right off the bat. And secondly, please tell me so I don't keep doing that. I think if you have a statement like that right at the beginning, not just verbally on the first day, but also in your syllabus, that's very helpful. And then I also think, I'll talk more about this, creating group norms on the first day of all of your classes that you will also follow. So I like to use oops, ouch, educate a lot in my classes. Oops, I made a mistake. Ouch, I'm sorry I hurt you. That also hurts me that I hurt you. Please educate me. How can I do better? Not all of us can know what's going to be harmful or damaging to another person, but we can certainly learn through our interactions with others. And I think those faculty who are especially receptive to those messages are more successful than those who are not. So I know that was a little bit around the topic of microaggressions, but there are some really, really fabulous entry-level texts that I am happy to recommend, and also those 2 videos I would really strongly recommend.
Thank you. Would you be able to provide the link to your website in the chat box so that folks can explore those resources?
I will do that. It may take a minute.
Thank you. And I'll encourage everyone to kind of scroll through the chat while we're doing these participant questions, because some questions are being answered there. You'll see a response from Craig Ogilvie, one of our Aspire team leaders. He provided a resource on microaggressions, a Google Drive document, it looks like. And then some questions about 10-month contract, 9-month contract, 12-month contracts were answered by Sasha in the chat box. So feel free to scroll through there if you haven't, because your questions may be being answered there. Okay, so one more question we got from this section is about faculty workload. So if any of the panel members just want to talk a little more about faculty workload and the expectations of maybe a new community college faculty member.
I'm happy to talk about this.
Our faculty workload is we're contracted to teach 15 hours of load. Anything over that is overload. So the maximum overload we can have is 24 hours. Okay, I mean, well, added to the 15, up to 24 hours. So if an instructor is willing to teach on the weekend, because we have weekend classes, or is willing to teach a dual credit course, then we allow them to teach just a little bit extra, up to 27 hours. But usually it's a 15-hour contract and then overload up to 24. And if an instructor is willing to teach a weekend college or a dual credit or a night class, then we'll give them a little bit more overload, up to 27 hours.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to add to that?
Sure. I think when you're looking at, they are not, okay, I'm going to stop looking at the chat. This is how I got myself in trouble in the last webinar too. Jess is probably virtually slapping me to stop doing this, and I'll make myself do it. I get so excited. I want to answer all the questions at once, and then I think of more. So what I'll say about the workload is we have the same deal. 15 LHE is a full-time load. If you're part-time, those things vary a lot. You can teach up to 10 LHE in a particular district, but that's the maximum, so you would need to go to multiple districts. In an area like Southern California, that's very easy. There are probably 25 colleges within a 45-minute drive from the same centralized location, and so we have in this area what are known as freeway flyers, which is a joke because no one's flying on freeways in Southern California at any time of the day or night, but they are doing their best to fly from one college to the other so that they can teach multiple courses under the 10 LHE requirement at multiple districts. So we see opportunities available. As full-timers, we also have committee requirements and professional development requirements, and those vary by district. So if you are looking at full-time positions, it's a really great idea to investigate what that looks like. I would also really strongly recommend that you preference colleges that have new faculty academies. This is something that has been going on for a long time in certain colleges, but is becoming more profound in some than others, and I think that's a really wonderful opportunity to not only build community, but also get that really strong infusion of professional development right at the start of your career. So there are, I mean, you know yourself, you know what kind of professional you are. If you want to spend the bulk of your time in your classroom, that's wonderful. If you want to spend the bulk of your time in your classroom, but also do service on campus, that's even better. So lots of different opportunities for that, but you can make a lot of this job what you want it to be. It's very flexible in that way, and certainly very appealing for that reason.
Thank you. I also wanted to remind the participants that the panelists are from 3 different parts of the country, or, well, 2 of them are in Texas, but I think different parts of Texas. So some of the things that are required at one community college may be really different in California. Like, let's say something that is required in Texas could be really different in California. So there will be a slide at the end of this that lists the panelists' information, so feel free to reach out to them if you have questions specific to their area. Okay, now I'll let Jess have it.
Okay. So we're going to talk about student diversity, and just a reminder, our last section is going to be on inclusive teaching, teaching in classroom. So if you have questions about that, we'll save those for that section. So you can see the 3 questions we're going to ask now. If you have other questions related to student diversity specifically, maybe after Timothy shares, we can collect some of those in the chat. So the first question is for Sasha here. Can you talk about the diversity of the community college student population and how and why it might be different from the student population at a typical 4-year university?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite parts about teaching at the community college. Our students are super diverse, and that always makes for wonderful conversations in the classroom, and it really keeps you on your toes. It's really nice to know what's kind of going on in the world and to see the different experiences your students are having. I tell this story a lot, but one of my favorite semesters was when I had a student who was 16 and a student who was 80 in the same class. It was a critical thinking of literature course, and it was very, very cool because the student who was 16 could not fathom what was going on in parts of some of the text that we were reading, and my student who was 80 would say, oh yeah, you know, when I was a boy we would walk over and this is what would happen, and he had all this great information that was well beyond the scope of what the vast majority of us had access to from our own experiences. So it's really awesome to have these groups of students who are super, super different and diverse and coming in with different experiences. So that is always really exciting. In addition to age, the race and ethnic backgrounds of our students are also much more diverse than our faculty, as I was mentioning earlier on, and that is really exciting too, because again, we have a lot of international students, we have a lot of students who are coming in with really different experiences, we have a lot of students who are undocumented, all kinds of different, everyone you can imagine is in our classrooms, and I love that. We also have students who are experiencing a lot of different socioeconomic opportunities and disadvantages, and so we have a lot of resources for that. Most of the community colleges now in California have food bank opportunities, so we are addressing food insecurity and housing insecurity through a variety of methods. All of our financial aid offices now also have a housing insecurity specialist, so we have resources for that. I am constantly baffled by how some of my students are doing so incredibly well when I learn that they are living out of their cars, and you know, somehow managing to make it to class and doing all of their assignments and are not really sure where they're going to be in a week, but they're here today and that's what matters. And I think having opportunities like that in the classroom is really important because it teaches the rest of the students in there that some of the problems that they think are these huge issues are really not that bad, and they can overcome, the terrible, awful nightmare of procrastination if other people can deal with this major thing that's actually serious. I think a lot of our students who are lacking educational support within their families or just within their communities, and so they come to us maybe because they feel like they have to. Maybe they were not doing really well in high school, or we have a lot of reentry students, so they made other choices after high school or even during high school. They may have dropped out, and so they come to us looking for a second chance or a different career, a different path. I have a lot of reentry students whose kids have recently gone off to college and they now want to go to nursing school. That's a really common thing. We have a wonderful nursing program, so that's very, very common at the college where I teach. But it's really exciting to see that and to be able to offer that opportunity. We also have a lot of veterans, which I love. We have a Veterans Resource Center, and that's, again, something that's super common in the community colleges in California. We recognize that our veterans come back from serving, and they have all kinds of goals and aspirations that are academic, but they also have a lot of different needs that maybe the faculty are not super prepared to handle, and different experiences that we may not fully understand. So we do a lot of training on that front. We do a lot of training on all of our fronts. We have extremely robust ally programming throughout our colleges. We have Undocu Ally, Safe Zone, which is LGBTQ. We have VetNet. We have Autism Ally. In fact, it's Autism Ally Week on our campus. We have trauma-informed training. We have foster ally training, so for foster youth. The list goes on and on and on. And I think it's exciting. We're always building new trainings to get a better sense of how to serve our students regardless of where they're coming from.
Thank you so much. It's great to hear the details about how diverse the community college is, and then looking forward in the next section to hear about some of the teaching strategies for meeting all the students' needs from all of those different backgrounds. So this next question here is for Karina. What learning disabilities do you see most often in your classroom, and what support does your institution provide for students with disabilities? And I think that was a question in the chat earlier on too about support for students with disabilities.
So one of the major learning disabilities we find here is like attention deficit disorder. Many students, they are under medication, or they get anxious when they're taking exams, and that doesn't allow them to perform well. So some of the resources that we have here for them is like note takers. If they have a problem, with concentrating in class and listening and writing at the same time, they can always request a note taker, and that person would, take all the notes and everything that the professor is saying, and then they'll give them to the student. We also have the testing center. So for those students who get anxious when they're taking the test with many other students, we can always give them that test separately in the testing center, and that usually helps them do better. More than learning disabilities, we have students, like non-traditional students, who have been away from school for so long that they have forgotten like foundations. So they are unprepared. And to those students, what we do is that we get in like extra time. We also encourage them to come to our office hours, or we do like reviews on the weekends so they can catch up with the material. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Karina. This third question here is for Timothy. What are some efforts your institution is taking to retain students from underrepresented groups? And what are they doing to encourage the retention of students from underrepresented groups, specifically in STEM? And that question comes from knowing that a lot of students tend to drop out at disproportionate rates if they're from an underrepresented group, but then also in STEM that's really exacerbated, and that there's an even higher percentage of students from underrepresented groups that are leaving STEM. So what kinds of things is your institution doing, Timothy?
Well, that's a good question. Well, as far as our institution retaining underrepresented students, is everything is seamless here at Odessa College. Any event that we have, everyone's welcome. There's not like certain events are for certain students, you know. So any event that we have, it's for everybody. Okay. So like Odessa College is celebrating Black History Month. Okay, they have a list of events. Everyone's welcome to them. You know, the teachers are welcome to them. The faculty is welcome. So we have that kind of community where everyone is welcome to these events, and everyone is invited to these events. So anything that has to do with any event, any scholarship of that nature, everyone can partake of that in that event or in that scholarship. I don't know if this is making sense or not. What are we doing to encourage the retention of our students in STEM, of our underrepresented in STEM? Is that it just comes down to, it really just comes down to who we are as instructors in the classroom, okay, and what kind of activities we have for our students in STEM. So, like for example, we have an organization here called the MESA organization, okay. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, and it's basically for all STEM students, and so. And a lot of our population, the majority of our population is Hispanic, but we also have students, or international students from Africa that are here. Okay, so it's diverse, and so you'll see a lot of our Hispanic students in that organization, our African American students, or international students from that organization. We have a lot of Hispanic women and just women in general and part of that organization. And what we do as a faculty is we continue to encourage that they can do it. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we don't have a program, you know, okay, to keep retention. We do what we do in the classroom to encourage these students. One of the things that we do that makes a difference is getting into the world. We always have one-on-one meetings with our students. Okay, our students know, you know, our students know our faculty or their instructor personally. Okay, we do our best to know their name in the first week, if not the first day. Okay, and so we have those relationships with our students. No student is left behind. Okay, no student is put aside or ignored. Any student that we see that's quiet or see that's not or not engaging, we reach out to those students. And so I have instructors that meet with them one-on-one. You know, they have to come to the support hours and meet with them one-on-one. I have like 4 instructors that do that. That's a general practice. They encourage, okay, I want you to meet, Susie has to meet with me at 3 o'clock in student support hours just to talk about their progress, talk about, you know, their difficulties and their struggles and the successes in the classroom. And so we just get into that relationship with the students. And with that, that's how we don't lose them, because we let them know you can do it. When they go into the front doors of our college, it's not to say, hey, I want to be an engineer, right? The students sign up, I want to be an engineer. Well, we don't say, okay, well, let's see if you can be an engineer. We say, okay, let's help you. Let's make it happen. What can I do to help you to become that engineer? And that's the mindset that we have here. It's not like, well, you don't have the goods, so you might want to change your career. We don't talk like that. Okay? We don't even talk about you need to drop out of the course because you're not doing so well. We don't do that. No, we go in and do what we can to help them to progress and to be successful in every course that we have here. And that's what makes a difference. And that's the culture here at Odessa College. That's what makes the difference to retain our students. If a student wants to be an engineer, we're going to make it happen. And that's the mentality that we have. So.
Thank you, Timothy. I really appreciate your, I was thinking as you were speaking of the word culture of the institution and culture of the department. It sounds like it's really very student-centered and encouraging students to develop a growth mindset, and really the importance of having those individual relationships with students and that one-to-one contact and time and effort that the faculty really prioritize. Compared to maybe a research institution like UCLA, where research is also the priority and students are having a lot more face time with their TAs. It sounds like at your college has done a really good job of prioritizing student-centered culture there. So I do see in the chat that there's lots of questions about getting hired. Timothy, I'm going to ask you to just mute here, so you're getting a little echo there. I think you were muted. Thank you. About getting hired and about job-related things. I do want to remind people that the recording from our webinar about getting hired is going to be posted. But just to follow up on a couple of questions related to this topic of student diversity. So one question that we have is about that students might react negatively if you tell them that they have a dyslexia or depression. If you believe a student might have a hidden disability, what course of action might you take?
I just answered that in the chat. Yes, I would love to jump right on that because that question scared me a little bit. I answered it in the chat, but very quickly. And also, I'm typing upward like this, like I'm in the Addams Family, because I've got my laptop on a really tall platform, so you're not staring at my belly button, as we say here. So it's very awkward and slow. But yeah, you can never, ever, ever diagnose a student. That is some scary legal trouble that you might get into, and also could be, as the person who asked that question presented, super offensive to them, as it would be to anyone, right? So it's really important to be very delicate about how you present that. On the first day of all of my classes, I give students a student information form, and one of the very first questions I asked is something that I vetted through our DSPS office, that's our Disability Services office, to make sure the wording is right and okay. And I basically tell students, you know, like, hey, I'd like to know as much about you as possible so that I can teach you effectively. You're welcome to not answer any question that makes you uncomfortable, or you can talk to me in person about it if that's easier for you or it's preferable. Something that I've done regularly on that form is ask students about any disabilities that they have or any concerns they have about their learning processes. And let me tell you, I have found out some fascinating things from that. I had a student who was narcoleptic in my second semester of teaching, and because that question was on the form, she came up to me and said, look, if I ever fall asleep in class, first of all, I want you to know it's medical, it's not personal, and secondly, please make sure that no one touches me, because my initial physical reaction to being awakened by touch is to punch. And so I was really glad that I asked that question so that the students and I would not get punched if this other student fell asleep in the class. And it was also helpful to me to know that she had a medical reason for having that happen if she did. Fortunately, she didn't. I worried about it all semester. The point is, it's a good idea to get to know what's going on with your students. They'll tell you about more traditional issues like, you know, they have dyslexia or ADHD or a brain injury, traumatic brain injury, or whatever the situation might be. If they express to you that they have concerns about a disability, the best thing to do is reinforce that you have DSPS on your campus or whatever your institution calls your Disability Services Center, and offer to walk over there with them. You can also, DSPS and all of our student services love classroom presentations. They're dying to get in your classroom, so you're welcome to ask them anytime to come in for a 5-minute presentation or a 30-minute presentation. That's really helpful to students. You can also let students know about different events that are going on campus. I mentioned a couple minutes ago that we're having Autism Ally Week this week. I have a student whom I have suspicions about maybe being on the spectrum, and I have been really, really pushing these activities in our class, and I was really excited to find out that this student and a few others of mine went to go check out some of those activities yesterday. I actually saw them there, so I was like, yes, a win. There are lots of ways that you can encourage students to receive services. If you notice that a student isn't doing well on some of their work in class, you can absolutely say to them, look, you know, I'm really concerned. I feel like what's happening is you're not having enough time to complete your quizzes. Have you thought about maybe talking to someone in the resource center about, you know, potentially seeing if there might be a way for you to get accommodations to get more time on your quizzes? The only person who can do that for you is that center. I can't make those accommodations. It's actually illegal for me to make choices that are related to your accommodations for potential disabilities. But DSPS can assess you, and they can figure out what the best way is to help you be successful. Students are very responsive to that. Sometimes they're not, and that's really frustrating because you know that they would automatically be getting A's in all of their classes if they would just go to DSPS for 10 minutes. But sometimes it takes a few semesters for them to actually be able to face that and to get over whatever stigma is living inside of them to want to go have that meeting. But, you know, it's typically a pretty easy conversation, but it does need to be handled appropriately. So I would never, ever, ever recommend saying to a student, you know, I think that you may be struggling with dyslexia, or I think you may be struggling with ADHD, or whatever the issue is. That's really not our place to say, and they also, DSPS won't tell you what services your students are receiving unless you're required to send over a text, and they still won't tell you why. They will just say the student has accommodations. So you are not allowed to contact DSPS either. That's really important.
Thanks, Sasha. I think you kind of addressed the second question too, which is about what do you do if a student seems like they're not accepting help or they're not doing well but they don't want any help. You mentioned that at the beginning of class you can do kind of a pre-course survey, kind of signaling to them that you're open to hearing from them if they are either have a diagnosed disability or are struggling with something that they think they might need support around, but also notifying them about related services and resources and events that are happening throughout the term to, again, continue to signal to them that there's resources and support. Karina or Timothy, do you want to add anything additional to either the question about specifically resources for students with disabilities or this other part of the question, the second question, which I think is more about students in distress? Do you have any experience or any comments to share about how you might support a student that seems to be having a hard time?
Yes, for the students with disabilities, I also put it on the syllabus where they can get help. Like my colleague commented previously, you cannot like diagnose them, but most of the times when they see that part there on the syllabus that we have a department for people with disabilities, then they usually will come at the end, of the first class period and talk to me and tell me about the problem that they might be facing, and then is when they can go to the department and they can get help. Some students, they need more help. I had students that they have like breakdowns and they need to be hospitalized. In those cases, we work one-on-one with those students and we just, we give them opportunities to make up the work. We have that policy also in here at EPCC, like if they are passing the class, at the moment they have that breakdown or meltdown, they get an incomplete and then they can come back and make up the work. And that has been working really well for students that they might have problems and sometimes they are stable and then something happens and they need to stop coming, but then they can make up the work. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, let's move on to our final section, and then we can, we'll probably have a little bit of time to continue with any questions we have not yet answered. So Shaquita's going to be asking these.
Okay, so we are on the inclusive teaching section. A lot of you had initial questions about inclusive teaching, and a lot of you stated that this is something that you want to learn more about. So panel members, go deep with these inclusive teaching strategies and practices. The first question is for Sasha. What teaching strategies have you adopted over time to make your classroom more inclusive? Did you find that some strategies are better than others?
Tons of them, and every day I'm thinking of new ones. I think it's so important to really communicate with your students, find out how they're doing and how they're responding. It's really easy as an instructor to just look at their grades and look at what they're turning in and say, oh yes, it's working. But I actually like to talk to the students and see what's working for them. So I'll talk a little bit about how I do that in just a minute. But I think the first thing is a lot of people have this impression that an equitable classroom is an easy classroom, and that could not be farther from the truth. Most of the people I know who are using equitable and inclusive practices in the classroom are some of the most rigorous instructors that I've ever met, and I think one of the cornerstones of the way that we operate is you don't see our students leaving. We're working really hard to keep them in the space, and that's not to say that every single one of them is going to leave the class with a passing grade or an A or whatever the case may be, but they're staying and they're persisting and they're learning, and that's really important. And so I mentioned that on the first day I used that student information form. I can't say enough about how much I've gotten from that opportunity, and it's really given me an idea about not just who my individual students are, but also who my class is as a group. If I find out that I have a bunch of psych majors in my class, I'm going to retool some of the readings that I'm doing and some of the activities that I'm doing to really accommodate the students who are there, who are interested in that. And if I have one student in the class who's a bio major, but they're in this critical thinking with literature course, I'm really going to look for opportunities to engage that student in ways that are specific to them too. So I really like that idea of individualized attention and instruction whenever and however you can. And I think that's something that our students are growing to really expect. The most important thing you can do on the first day is also provide a syllabus that has equitable, inclusive, and welcoming language and also policies. I think that's really critical. There are a couple of syllabus-related articles, syllabus development articles that I really love that I use with the interns who are in my program who are transitioning from interns into part-time faculty. And I also use this in our new faculty academy because I think that a lot of people come out of grad school and realize that they've been basically penalized. That's what a syllabus is. It's a list of rules that you might break and what bad things will happen to you when you break them. And so that's not a super welcoming message. It's like, welcome to my class. Here's all the stuff you're going to do wrong and all of the ways that you might fail. And these are the ways I'll anger easily at you if you do them. So we try to really use a different kind of tone with our students in the community colleges to let them know that we're people and they are too. And we accept their whole selves, not just their highest level academic opportunities. So I'm happy to share those links later on. A couple of the other things I wanted to mention, I've talked a little bit about integrating presentations from DSPS, but as I mentioned much earlier in the webinar, I don't think that there's much of a separation now between what we do in instruction and in student services. I think we're very, very fortunate to have such a strong relationship between the many student services that we have and our instructional opportunities. And I think students need to know that a student service is not separate from what they're doing in the classroom. The student services are designed to make sure that they are as functional and comfortable as they can be as people, so that those external life experiences do not get in the way of their academic pursuits. And there was a question earlier about like, what do you do when a student is failing and they don't want help? Well, a student is almost never failing ever because they lack the skills or the ability to do the work in your class. 99% of the students I have who are failing or not doing well or who are struggling in their classes, it's because of external reasons. And if they don't have sources and support, resources and support to move through those opportunities and to get out of the weeds or whatever their situation is, they're not going to do well in your class. If it's between finding a way to eat or finding a way to feed their kids or finding protection from an abusive partner, those are going to be prioritized over the lab report that they're supposed to write for your class. That's just the reality of the situation. And that is as it should be, right? So it's important that we show them that we understand that there's a whole list of stuff that makes up their life and that we're here to help with all of it. That's not to say that we personally are going to be providing therapy or diagnosing or anything like that, but we certainly are there as a sort of vessel to direct them to the right resources when they have needs that come up. I think also in terms of class policies, being as flexible as possible is really important, and using policies that are appropriate for all students. One of the things that I started doing a couple of years ago is using drop the lowest score in as many categories as I could justify in my class, and I found that to be really useful. Students who are struggling for reasons that we might consider legitimate definitely benefit from having a night off or a day off or whatever the scenario might be. They don't have to worry about that quiz because we dropped the lowest score. And students who are the best ones in your class, they also get sick. They also blow out a tire on the freeway. They also have a sick child at home who can't go to school that day, so they can't make it to class either. We all have these moments, so I think building in flexibility to your schedule is really important. Multiple methods of assessment, so students who really struggle with a particular kind of assessment also have other opportunities to show their skills and their knowledge. I think we all have those students in our class who are very silent, who don't like to really express themselves in large group or even small group discussion. Can you include smaller writing assignments that they're doing on their own? Can you, if you're in a very individualized pursuit, can you also include opportunities for small group activities. There are just so many ways that you can be creative in the classroom. To me, the most important part of equitable and inclusive teaching that's relatively new, is intrusive instruction. And I've talked about this in previous webinars before, but if you haven't taken Teaching Men of Color in the Community College, that's a really wonderful webinar, or not webinar, it's a web-based course that you can take. It's about $200, and I can provide a link for that later. I am not affiliated with it. I don't want you to think I'm suggesting that because I get a cut. It would be awesome. I'd be so rich by now because I love that course and I'm constantly talking about it. But the benefit of that course, one of the primary benefits of it, is the way that they talk about intrusive instruction techniques. And so that's really how you can, I mean, it's exactly what it sounds like. You're intruding upon the student when something's going wrong. So I know I'm giving a very long answer, and I'll end with this part of it. All of our colleges in the state of California now have Canvas shells, and so Canvas is the online component that we use. So you may be familiar with Blackboard or something like that. Canvas is the system that we have statewide. Every single one of our in-person courses now comes with a Canvas shell. I use Canvas to check in and check up on my students constantly and to encourage them and to see how they're doing and what's going on with them. I love it. Every time they're turning in an assignment on there, I can message them in there and say, hey, I really missed you in class tonight. Everything okay? Just make sure you get the notes or whatever. And that can be really useful. So intrusive instruction techniques and using the online format for that as well.
Thank you. Participants can look forward to a lot of resources being sent out. Thank you for providing all of those, Sasha. Timothy, okay, what are some of the challenges that can affect a community college student's classroom performance? How does this influence your teaching strategy?
Well, there's two types of students, right? There's traditional and there's non-traditional. Traditional students, all their focus is at school, while the non-traditional students are students who have to work, who have kids, who can only go to school in the mornings and then work all night, or vice versa, who have to work all day and then come to school at night. And so those are the challenges that can affect students in the classroom performance. And what that does to influence my teaching strategy is that, number one, their course needs to be have 24-hour access. So in other words, having videos, instruction videos, if they miss class for whatever reason, if it's a job-related missing, or if they're sick, or their babies are sick, they can still have access to instruction. And so we have videos up there, and we use the Blackboard system, so we have videos up there that where they can always access the knowledge, always access the content if they miss class, so they won't get behind. Another strategy that we are implementing as a department is the flipped classroom strategy, where students takes notes at home, and then they bring those notes to class, and it switches from a centered learning approach to a student-centered approach. So, a teacher-centered approach to a student-centered approach. And so students will actually focus in on their practice problems or their homework in class, and they get the knowledge at home. It's just like taking the Bloom's taxonomy triangle and flipping it upside down. And so they get their base knowledge, their understanding, their basic skills at home, and then when they come into the classroom, now we can go further and deeper into the content, and they can work on challenging problems. You can change it to a problem-based learning classroom. So that's what we're implementing right now, and it's very successful. It's working very well for us right now. So those are the things that influence our teaching strategy. So other than that, that's basically what we do. I mean, so if you have any questions, other questions regarding that. So.
Thank you. Okay, and the last question is for Karina. What, if any, previous experience has helped prepare you to work with a diverse student population? Where did you learn how to implement inclusive teaching strategies, and did this training happen as a graduate student or once you started your job?
After I finished my first 2 years of college, I started tutoring here at EPCC. So I tutored chemistry the last 2 years of my undergrad career, and then I went into the master's degree, and after my master's degree I started teaching as an adjunct faculty. And during that period of time is when I learned the most about teaching techniques and inclusive strategies. And it was just by trial and error. Like you try different things and you see what it works. Something that I did when I started as an adjunct faculty, I would assign homework, but I wouldn't pick it up. Like I would just assign the homework, ask questions if they had, problem solving the homework, but I wouldn't ask them to turn it in, and students wouldn't do the homework, right? So then from there I learned that I had to pick up the homework if I want them to do the homework. So now it's something that I do, like all the homework that I assign, I pick it up and, I give them a grade. Throughout the years, I've been implementing different inclusive teaching strategies, like online materials, like all the textbooks that we use, they come with different online help. So they can do like a pretest. So before they come to the class, they need to take that pretest online so they know what the class is going to be about. So then they're ready to ask questions during the class. Some of the students, or most of them, they like to see the application of chemistry like in real life. So we have like a chemistry club here at EPCC, and we do different demonstrations at different schools. Like we go to elementary schools and then we show different chemical concepts using hands-on experiments. So the students from my class, they help me, so they need to explain those concepts to the kids, so then they need to understand it. So when they see the application of the different concepts, it clicks better and they get more engaged in the class. I'm also doing undergraduate research. I'm the coordinator for the LSAM program here at EPCC, and recruiting students to do research is something that also motivates them. When they see, because I take them to the local conferences that UTEP has here at El Paso, they see other students presenting on different research topics, and they get excited about it, and they get engaged, and this program has been very beneficial to EPCC. We had students from EPCC going like to France to conduct research, and that's really good for them. So all these different techniques that I've been using, I learned them as a graduate student, but once I started working here, and it was just like a process of trial and error. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. We did have one question come through for Timothy, and it is, have you always taught with a flipped classroom, and what have you learned works well?
No, I've never. No, this is actually the first time I've actually done the flipped classroom. I've always been of those ones that love to lecture and do that teacher-centered approach. But this is the first time we've done it. Well, I've done it before due to certain circumstances. Like, for example, we have a lot of material and we're kind of getting behind a little bit because students are trying to, or we have to slow down because of the knowledge content. So sometimes I have to catch up and say, okay, well, you know what, we're kind of behind here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the classroom where over the weekend I need you to watch these videos, take notes, and then we come back on Monday and explain it. So I've done a little bit of flipped classroom, but not where I'm doing it completely. And it's kind of strange because it feels awkward, because now you went from a teacher role to a facilitator role, and it feels like a lot of students don't really need you as much. You know, sometimes you don't feel like you're needed, but you are, because they do ask questions, and the way you have to. And so what I've done is I just flipped it, and they take notes at home. Right, and so they bring their notes with them, and then I grade their notes. So I make them accountable by taking their notes, and I grade them. What I mean by grading them, I'm just seeing, did you take your notes? And then, in the classroom, they're working on their practice problems. So I started with that in Cal 2, and now in Cal 3, I have a cohort of students that went from Cal 2 to Cal 3, and we're continuing on. Well, what I've learned from that is I just can't just continue okay, the same old, okay, you take notes at home, and then you just practice the problems in class, and then just continue doing it that way. I have to come in, let's say 10, 15 minutes, and say, okay, what did you learn from the notes? Is there any questions over the notes? Is there any questions over the videos that you may have? And so I'll do like a 10 or 15-minute little summary of what is important and what you need and what the takeaways are. And I'll even ask them questions, you know, some content questions to make sure they understand. Like, for example, gradient. You know, I make sure that I ask the question, what is gradient? You know, because if you're not careful, students are just going through the motions of just doing the math problems and not understanding why they're doing it. So I got to be real careful in doing the flipped classroom, making sure I ask certain questions that they need to answer at least the 10, 15 minutes of class. I don't pick up homework because their goal is to do their homework in class before and try to finish it before they leave, you know. And sometimes that doesn't happen, that's okay, but I don't pick it up. But I make them accountable of practicing by giving them, let's say, the next day, okay, you should have done your practice of section 13.1, so I'm going to give you what you call a practice check. I'm going to give them like 2 random questions. They should be able to do those questions. And I got them in groups, so they're not in silos. They're working in groups of 3 to 4 students. So.
Thank you. Okay, so we are going to wrap up here with some last minute advice and any kind of tips you can give to the participants. But before we do, I do want to encourage everyone to check out the local internship programs at their local community colleges or universities, because I think you can find a lot of resources there, some of which Karina mentioned. So I'm going to put in the chat box a link to the Iowa Regional Collaborative website. They have some resources there that you can check out, and I'll put another link to our California Regional Collaborative because we have a list of internship programs there as well. So to the panelists, do you all have any last advice or any tips that you want to provide to our participants?
We can probably hear from each of you on this one. Sasha looks like she's off for a minute. Karina, do you want to start?
So it's for the kind of preparation or training question?
Yeah, or any advice that you want to provide to the participants, any programs that you want to highlight, or any other resources that you want to provide before we close out?
Well, if they have an opportunity to work as TAs in their 4-year institution, that will give them like a good insight of how to deal with students and how to explain the different concepts to them. So just getting like experience as a TA, that will be a good start. In my case, since I teach chemistry, there is journals for chemical education. So I read those a lot, like for specifically to teach chemistry. So there are specific teaching techniques. But I'm sure for any science that they're gonna teach, they can find those type of journals, and they give them really good ideas of how to introduce difficult topics to the students.
Thank you. Sasha or Timothy, do either of you want to add to that?
I'm back. I got kicked out, so I don't know what the question was. I'm guessing it's about resources. Do you want to fill me in for a second on that?
Yeah, resources or any advice that you want to provide to the participants on next steps or things that they can do to help them better prepare to teach at a community college?
That's what I thought, but I wanted to check. Okay, so yeah, I would say keep attending webinars. I know that seems really obvious, but just in case, I wanted to recommend the JSPAC webinars. If you go to jspac.org, it's jspac.org. They are actually one webinar into a 5-webinar series, a 5-part webinar series. Thank you. And it is wonderful so far. You can see what all the topics are, and they're spaced out. And if you register for them, you can also see the recordings if you can't make it to them. But they're really great, and they're all on inclusive teaching and equity in the classroom and all of that kind of stuff that we're talking about here in much more detail, I think, because they have more time to cover it and more webinars in which to do it. So I'd recommend that. Also, I'll send out the information or I'll send to Shannon the information for those syllabus articles that I was talking about. I really recommend taking a look at that. And then I'll echo what Karina was saying too. I think it's really important if you can have access in any way to working in a community college environment, whether that's, you know, working in a tutoring center or serving as a supplemental instructional assistant or any kind of teaching related role in the classroom. If you can be an intern in a faculty internship program, that's a wonderful way to go. But know too that if you're looking to be in a community college full time, the expectation is that you will have some part-time experience prior to that happening. Some people can fast track that, but you should know that some is going to be pretty much expected of you. There are even going to be some job announcements that come out and say that you have to have a minimum of 2 to 3 years to even be considered for it. So the sooner you can get in, if you're in a PhD program right now but you have a master's already that's been conferred, start teaching at a community college part-time if you can make that happen. That's a really great way to go. Get your foot in the door as soon as you can.
Okay, thank you. And a few minutes left for Timothy.
Yes, I just, you know, they answered it. I mean, I'm just going to echo off of them. They, you know, get it. You know, if you can get an adjunct position to get your foot in the door, okay. Tutoring, you know, when you tutor students, you get more involved. You'll learn how the students think. You'll get the heart of what it is to be a teacher, is getting into their world and tutoring and helping them with any with whatever subject they need help on. But also, like they're saying, and you know, they're talking about all these webinars out there, and you know, be a lifelong learner. A good teacher is also a good learner, and so you always want to be a lifelong learner. Don't ever let good enough be good enough. Always strive to improve, because what happens is if you stay stagnant, you learn one technique and you stay stagnant in a certain way that you think is always work, you're never going to grow. You always want to be growing as an instructor, so always find different ways, research, learn different ways of teaching, instruction, and things of that nature, and always be a lifelong learner, and always get into the student's world. You know, have a heart for students, and just always know that you let those students know when you're working with students, let them know that you're there for them, that you're not alone in this process and their learning. So by doing that, you'll be a good teacher. You'll be a good instructor. So.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna just again thank our panelists for volunteering your time today to come and share all of your wisdom and experience and words of encouragement with our attendees today. I know so many people who have attended here are really thinking about a career at a community college as their next step, and I know that the words of wisdom that you've shared with them are really extremely valuable. So thank you so much for taking the time this morning and the time to prepare. Your contact information is here, so you might hear from some people. You might have some follow-up questions, but in terms of kind of the main point of contact for anything about today's session or any of the other panels that we've done, Shaquita will be, you know, very happy to hear any feedback or recommendations that you have. Our plan is to do this again next year in the fall and offer, you know, the same series or perhaps modified topics a little bit. So if you have any suggestions, please feel free to reach out to her, or specific questions that you need help answering in terms of your own job search. And the survey there that Shannon has posted in the chat to give us some feedback should only take a couple of minutes. Please take the time to do it and give us any feedback that you have about today's experience. And other than that, I'll just thank Shaquita for her preparation for today's moderating. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.